So the panel discussion, loosely speaking, is how are fintechs challenging our financial habits? And I think we've heard a lot about kind of what we're learning through all these different platforms about how people do manage their money. So I don't know. I think I guess I'd like to start with each of you maybe in turn to see what is the biggest change that you've seen happening to people's financial habits through your particular product?
That's a really tough question.
It's a broad question. You have to just pick one thing that you think.
I think they're open to, again, what I said earlier, to taking more risk.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I don't mean that they're going to, put it all on black at a casino. They are looking at asset classes which they wouldn't have looked at before.
Mm-hmm.
Before they would have gone down the traditional route and let's invest in some portfolio or whatever. Now they are, I keep harping on about crypto, but putting crypto aside, they are now starting to look at more risky stocks like look at FTSE 350, not just a FTSE 100.
Mm-hmm.
So they're open to doing that as they become more and more educated.
Okay. And Ali, what do you think is changing with these small business customers then?
Yeah, we come from three very different world fields. Maybe the biggest sort of phenomenon from my sector where I think about businesses is just maybe the number of businesses. The growth in absolute business numbers far outstrips the growth in the economy. More and more, I think, when you have more fintechs that kind of serve small businesses, enable them, link them to, link their workflows to their banking, to their accountant, and so on, it makes it much easier for you to actually get set up in the first place. So maybe the biggest thing I've seen is, you go to Zero, you get to speak to the guys at Zero, they'll tell you that the number of businesses should double in the next 10 years.
I wonder though, just to come back on that, we get told often these statistics about lots of small businesses starting up, but then the sadder side of that is how many of these small businesses are just never profitable and stuff. Do you think there's a role that a Tide can play in trying to educate the newbie business owner?
Yeah, of course. We were speaking about this briefly before. One of the main reasons businesses go out is a lack of cash flow. So you can actually have a perfectly solvent, credible business, but then simply run out of cash flow. Your invoices don't get paid, and you have to stop what you're doing. So Tide already does some stuff around this. Helping you project where your cash flow might be, automatically chasing your invoices for you. We sort of play around with some ideas. Could we not move into maybe not debt collection, but you outsourcing someone, having someone there to help you chase your invoices on your behalf. So yes, I think there's quite a lot that certainly the software side thing can do, particularly around that cash flow management, particularly around that particular point.
Yeah. And Stan, World Remit is more about sort of sending money to somewhere, but in terms of, does that change financial habits? Is there a kind of money management aspect that comes into what you guys do?
Yeah, I think sending money abroad, I guess it comes back to, you can take as an example traveling. When you are traveling, and I think in the whole habits, you are expecting to get charged a lot of money on all your spending, and all of those, fintechs, not only Remit of course, but all of the neobanks are, changing absolutely this and saying like, look, you are spending that amount of money when you are traveling, and that's an actual cost. And when you want to send money back, that's back to your own country because you're not there anymore. Another example, it's not really about World Remit, but moving from a country to another one means you have to switch off all your accounts, open all of your accounts. And when you go to the brick and mortar bank, they tell you, well, look, to open an account here, you need to have a flat. And when you try to get a flat, they tell you that you have to open an account first. And I have a lot of people around me that are living in the UK, and then you have Revolut, Monzo, and all the new banks when you take a selfie of yourself with your passport and whatever. So that's a massive change, and people are, back to how long do you work in a company and potentially in a country with the B word again, but it's all about facilitating that. It seems easy to move even within Europe, but actually it is not. All of this hassle you have to go through, and the fintechs are definitely helping on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more kind of portability of your, almost like your identity as a bank customer.
And again, when you see this process of opening an account and closing it, how do you feel about that as a person? Like, you feel a little bit stupid, and as an employee, if you have to tell the other person, oh, you need your address and whatever, I mean, I think you stick to a process, but I mean, so that's where as well, in terms of value and in terms of what you can create for the society, like where you want to move.
But I want to talk also a little bit about risk, though, because I think one of the worries there is that, you know, as we make these processes easier and smoother, and this is really a question for all of you, but then, you know, there will be bad actors, there will be processes that that are not followed, and you know, where do you see the kind of the big risks coming potentially for this sector? And I'm going to ask each of you, maybe I'll start with Iqbal to give you a bit of time to think. But I mean, you know, do you think, I mean, with eToro, for example, you know, people losing their shirts on crypto and there being a backlash, or this kind of, I mean, we've sort of seen that at various points anyway as the price goes up and down, but
I think probably more people have lost their shirts in the 2007 crash, which is traditional money and traditional investing rather than in crypto. But is there a risk? Yes, there's a risk, but there's a risk of leaving your money in the bank also because of inflation. I think what we're trying to do, and again, I'm not interested in plugging eToro here, what we're trying to do is, if you invest in different asset classes on different platforms, so you go and buy Bitcoin from Coinbase, or you go and buy shares from Hargreaves, and you go and buy ETFs from Vanguard, on every single platform you have to calculate your risk profile. Every single platform calculates your risk profile differently. So you're not really trying to create a portfolio across all three of those. You don't really know having your money managed correctly. What we're really trying to do is the end-to-end risk management. So whether you want a risk level of 0, and so you want to invest in a portfolio of FTSE 100 stocks, let's say, or leave it in cash, to a risk level of 10, and you want to do leverage trading on Bitcoin, or in the middle buy shares, we want to enable that across the entire platform. On one platform, kind of like the Amazon of finance, for want of a better word. So that's where we want to head, and that's how we want to manage the risk, rather than having you go to lots of different platforms and have to think about risk on lots of different platforms.
But when we were talking before this session, and you were saying you wanted to kind of everyone to, you know, democratize sort of investment a lot more. I mean, I thought it was one of those sort of you know, anecdotes about the sort of great, you know, beginning of the Great Depression and the stock market crash of 1929 and all that. It was, you know, that was because the bellboy in the hotel was, you know, investing in the stock markets, and the, you know, your hairdresser and all this kind of stuff. I mean, so as you democratize, this is, you know, there is more potential for people then to overinflate the market, you know.
But again, I think that's the FT talking. Apologise. The reason being is 99% of the people here are taught to save.
Okay.
2 pence on a loaf of bread, how to save on their credit card bills. And only 1% are taught to actually make money. We need to change that conversation. And that, unless we do that, we're always going to be having these meetings every 2-3 years, and we're going to have these events say we need to get to education, We need to encourage people to start talking about money and making money, and make it a good thing. It's not a bad thing to make money. And we need to stop talking about saving. As much as I love Martin Lewis and his money tips, etc., we need a Martin Lewis out there to go and tell people this is how you should be investing.
Yeah.
That's what we really need to do. That's what Sifted needs to do.
Well, we can try. So yeah, so save that 2p on the tin of beans, but then invest it in Tesla and Bitcoin. So
so again, I'm going to have to come to this from a totally different angle. When you talk about bad actors and risk, this is something I'm sure you do as well. We're very concerned about money laundering, KYC, and fraud, and so on. And we've had to kind of learn things the hard way. This is a very big part of what a bank does. It's a very extremely big part of what a business bank does. It's already the case that it's very easy to set up and register a business on a company's house. And if we're, in effect, trying to make it easier to do business and sort of get set up in the UK, we're almost sort of, in a small way, encouraging, you know, like these sort of bad actors. But we've built some very sophisticated stuff internally. I can tell you, one of our developers sort of have the brainwave that if we kind of try to plot all the people who use Tide and see the interrelationship between them, we can sort of identify clusters of behaviour And this became quite a big part of how we do financial crime within Time. We now have a big team that does this, you know, it looks like Minority Report, but looking at all
Did
the
you
different
actually
companies.
discover financial crime using this method?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. You find clusters of suspicious activity. What are these people all doing with one another? And then we use it to trigger investigations. Now, this is something that we're doing off our own backs, and frankly, the MCA can't really keep up. You know, we raise these sort of, we raise these reports, and you know.
So you either have to hand this over then to the NCA and
Of course,
say,
yeah,
this is
yeah.
what we found, but they're not
Well,
really following up?
Well, I don't want to be too disparaging, of course, about being careful what I say. What I will say is that, you know, we do a very good job of finding this sort of stuff ourselves, and we
Okay.
try to keep it as on top of it as we can.
Yeah, but do you think there might be a scandal, not necessarily with you guys, but with one of these, and that always has a very chilling effect on the whole sector?
Yeah, we worry about it. It would be a very bad thing for us if one of our competitors had a scandal like this. It would undermine the confidence in the entire system of sort of non-traditional banks. There have been some sort of minor hiccups. There have been some sort of minor wobbles, let's say. You know, I won't name names. I think you might know who I'm talking about. They're not far from here. But yeah, I mean, that is a risk. And of course, I think the regulators are very much, you know, aware of this, and will be trying to make sure that people are behaving well.
Okay, and then there's very little that you can do about the actions of others. But are these conversations that you have with peers? I mean, do you?
I can tell you actually, there's a very, you know, we might all be competitors with one another, but our financial crime teams are very friendly with one another, and they do in fact trade tips. So actually, they have a very good relationship between each other.
They all look like on the same WhatsApp group or something.
It's something like that. They do meet up and they trade tips. I think it's very, you know, ought to be encouraged actually. Like, whereas you won't find that in the business side of things to quite the same extent. But no, there's a good community of swapping tips, because ultimately I think
Okay.
we kind of do. I want to be interested to see if
well,
that's the same phenomenon.
Do
with
you guys do that? I mean, you're obviously also really worried about the money laundering side of things. So.
Well, that's a core. Well, I mean, the company is based on that. I mean, so, but yeah, I think in terms of definition of risk, we are not seeing the thing the same angle, but yeah, 100% share your view on it. I think it's talking about maybe innovate finance or these kind of things that, this kind of circle where it's almost a body for fintech. So I guess that's kind of the community where people can share ideas as well. But yeah, back to your point. I mean, I think it is absolutely crucial for transferring money to Africa. It's absolutely crucial to be on top of, ahead of the curve for that. Staying with low level of transaction mitigate the risk, but it doesn't mean that you need, potentially at some point you're gonna carry on growing in terms of the volume of, not the volume, but amount per transaction. So yeah, you need to be ready for that and carry on being ahead of the curve. So, yeah.
And do you have similar things where you're sort of watching for patterns and being able to maybe detect things in ways that, you know, even perhaps the traditional banks just couldn't do because you're much more digital.
The thing is that as it is pretty segregated, like as I mentioned that we are in 6,500 corridors. So you can identify which diaspora is transferring where and see some patterns. And again, transactions are always roughly the same amount. So you can pick this up with that, with the fact that it's US to Nigeria, it's Croatia to Cameroon. So this, it is, this segmentation is pretty. You can use that to make some analysis.
Yeah. So yeah, back to the kind of. Wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, general fintech stuff, but what's I asked Iqbal this earlier, but I'd be interested in your views as well. You know, what's going to be the big fintech story this year? What's everybody going to be watching and talking about?
I should have prepared an answer for this, because when you asked Iqbal, I was thinking to myself, God, what do I think?
Do you agree that it might be the sort of consolidation angle?
Well, we're starting to see it, right? So there are rumours of some acquisitions taking place, and you know. I forget what was the example. I forget the exact name of the firm, but it was particularly MySpace of challenger banks, the first such challenger bank was properly acquired, which is a very good and very healthy thing for our industry. I think what you might see is maybe the failure or the sort of partial failure of some of the corporate ventures in fintech. You know, a response to that might be direct acquisitions. So yeah, perhaps that'll be the big story of 2020. But I couldn't tell you.
What about you, Stan? What do you think? Acquisitions or some other story?
there will be acquisition, but I don't think that's going to be big because I mean it's pretty dangerous to go big with your first acquisition. The consolidation is coming. I mean, lots of new banking. I mean, personal banking or now business banking. So I don't see a big announcement. I mean, I don't think that there will be a big announcement in the fintech world now. I mean, that's purely my view. Now, a failure of one of those, that's more probable for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that you said that maybe some of the corporate efforts will fail, and that was that. You know, we've seen some of those not working very well. In case you haven't read it already, you should read the Sifted story on Metal and RBS, which is a really fun tale. But I guess it's how. And we've only got 3 people from traditional banks here, so we can be really mean about them.
Yeah.
So let's go for it for a moment. Like, why is it that will they ever be able to really challenge you, or will they continuously fail? I'll start with Iqbal because I haven't asked you for a while.
No, so just one point I wanted to come back on. I think this building still has the HSBC logo on it.
Okay.
They were fined billions of dollars for money laundering. So I think the risk is still out there, rather with the startup sitting here. So why? It's culture. And I think that's, if you look at the banks out there, for them to build a startup, it's not just about investing money. They have to think differently, and those people work differently. They behave differently. And I think I was mentioning outside, eToro does a lot of business. Just now, I've been talking to the CEO on WhatsApp. All of our communications are on WhatsApp, not even email, because email's too slow. So we do business on that. JP Morgan will not do that. So what they really need to do, those banks need to come together, form a venture fund, or take someone's paycheck for a month and put $100 million into a startup in Old Street, and saying, go and do your own thing, build it. We'll support you from the operational side and our network and our access to the regulator. You guys go and figure it out on your own. If they try to do it inside, it will fail, because what startups do really well is take a square piece of paper and cut it and make a circle. Those guys over there need to retain shape.
So I agree and I disagree. I think.
Can't disagree. Shouldn't disagree.
No, I like disagreement.
Agree
That's
to
fun.
disagree.
Fine.
Agree to disagree. There we go. You can agree to disagree.
I think what you suggested about funding a startup and, as you say, introducing sort of, acting as I suppose lubrication as they kind of get started could work, but almost the over availability of capital, I think, stifles innovation. I think when you don't really have the fires to put out, you don't really have barbarians at the gate, then you get a little bit cozy. And only because you brought it up, I'll say the example with Metal, where they have relatively unambitious targets. I think because they have this bed of funding and so on to sit on top of, whereas we think we need to absolutely stay ahead, and so we panic about it every day. How are we going to sort of stay ahead?
Well, I mean, the banks are a little bit conflicted as well, because on the one hand they want to try the new things, but in the back of their mind they're still worried about it cannibalizing if it becomes really big. I think that's why Metal was relatively unambitious, because they didn't want it to upset the rest of the business that quickly, and that every corporate sort of has that, however much they might deny that they have it, but it's somebody in that business is worrying about what's going to happen if the startup really takes off.
What's certain, though, back to your point, is I can't really see this happening from the big banks themselves. I mean, when we're interviewing for product managers at Tide, a lot of them come from banks, and they're just so frustrated with the pace. And I always have sympathy for the banks, like the organisational sort of turnaround you have to do to become more agile is just such a monumental task. I don't think it can be done, and so I agree with you on that point.
I think to Iqbal's points, there is, it's back as well to the risk. When you are, it's not being a bank, it's being a large corporate. You need to, you have to mitigate your risk and give a set of keys to some, millennials to say, okay, play around. No, you need to figure things, you need reporting, you need to understand what's going on. And so, which means that once you are inside this incubator, it's harder, in fact, because you have loads of, you have loads of things around you that kind of block you to try a bit more. So I think I agree with you on that.
Yeah. Now, I do want to open up to questions soon, but I want us to talk about the kind of the unmentionable, the future of London as a global financial capital. Again, I already asked Iqbal about it, but I'd be interested in your three sort of collective minds on, you know, what does the future hold for London, and does, you know, will tomorrow change things very much for your own businesses?
I think Stan might give you a more interesting answer than me because we're very much a UK business. Sorry, putting pressure on you there. We're very much a UK business that only kind of operates in the UK. So for us, it's all about the availability of talent. So will London continue to be seen as the number one place, really in the world, for fintech? There isn't really another city in the world where finance and tech overlap in the same way. Now, I still maintain it will. I still think it will. But you know, I think these effects on the, you know, I suppose the availability of people being attracted to the centre should be relatively minor. But you know, we're just one example, I think, of how things have been affected. The licensing and cross-bordering is where real complexity comes into it, and that'll be where the real damage is.
Yeah, I mean, Stan, you were saying that there might be obviously positive effects if we see, you know, more migrants and more migration in general in different directions. But do you think there's also risks that are coming now, specifically for
I mean, I fully share the potential talent that may travel. I mean, London, I think we're pretty lucky. We're in a small world, and on top of that, we are in almost the center of the world in terms of fintech. I mean, I don't think that there's any other city that can compete today with London, and that's pretty rare in any other sector. But Singapore is working hard on it, the California as well, but New York is far behind. So, I mean, I think it's being able to keep those talents. I mean, there's loads of attrition in any tech company in the world. So to make sure that they are still, that this career being attractive and keep the right person on board. So that's, I fully agree, that's the main risk. After that, the business is going to carry on growing. Yes, people are going to carry on moving. So there will be still some business for a remittance company.
What can you do about the talent aspect? I mean, is there anything specific that you can do to kind of make sure that you still have access to people, whatever happens?
I think is to think about, I mean, taking people, I mean, it's being fair with people. I mean, on one side, you can't say, okay, I'm going to disrupt this world over there, but you know what, I mean, maybe that's another same example we're going to come across when you have to get whatever done on the wall in the building. It's kind of a, I mean, I don't know how you can, on one side say, I'm going to be nice to everyone and be nice with the new customer and I'm going to make your life easy. But on the other side, you whip slaves at work, and so you need to respect people and treat them fairly. I think that's the key thing of it.
Yeah. And
to, after that, making sure that you talk between departments and make things happen and create a career path for people. But I mean, I think the journey to get in and to the first impression when you come in, it's crucial. And that's basically where there's I mean, it's a massive point of, I mean, pinpoint that fintech needs to carry on.
And Iqbal, on a scale of 1 to 5, how worried are you about the talent question now? You know, whether you'll still be able to hire who you want to.
I'm a believer that good companies will always find the talent, and good talent will always find a way to good companies. And I don't think it's like saying America's fallen apart because you need a visa from India to go and work over there. It hasn't. So you can obtain visas, you'll find a way. I think what the painful side, so we have websites in 22 different languages right now. For us, the real pain with Brexit, we don't really know where it's going to end up. The real pain for us is the licensing regime. So the problem with fintechs in the UK, which the US don't have, is access to a large customer base. So the US, one language, 300 million customers or whatever. In the UK, if we want to expand that customer base, we have to deal not only with the language barrier in Europe, we now have to deal with different licensing regimes. That's really difficult because for fintechs in the UK to scale, you need global operational scalability. Very few fintechs have done that. If you have a look at the Revoluts of this world, they're in a handful of countries. If you have a look at, say, Robinhood, they're in the US and Australia, and they found it challenging to come to the UK because of regulation, etc. Right? We have regulation in the US, in Australia, in Cyprus, in the UK. Germany, it's very, very difficult to go and dot the I's and cross the T's in all of these countries so you can actually service their customers, let alone the languages. And I think that's the biggest challenge to fintech. If Brexit doesn't fix this or makes the licensing regime a little bit more complicated, that's really going to strangle
And
that.
we don't really know yet what the new licensing regime will be. It will continue as it is for a year, but then...
Well, you can get TPR, temporary permission regime, for like 12 months, but even then, yeah, I think somebody somewhere needs to sit down and have a conversation. Maybe Boris.
Well, so another one of the long list of things we need to resolve this year, really.
Yeah.
But hey, listen, let's open it out to the audience, because we've been talking a lot and you guys haven't had a chance. So we've got roaming mics in the room, so if you've got a question, yeah, lots of questions. So if we can start maybe, let's see if the mics are coming. We've got one at the front here, lady in the red jumper, and then one behind, and then we've got one at the back there. So yes, one. Okay.
Okay, thank you for putting on such a great evening. I think the amount of people in the room shows this conversation is important. So my question is, you've talked about money management, you've talked about financial habits. What are your thoughts on financial well-being? Because financial well-being is slightly different from money management. And I think, you know, we do talk a lot, I think you touched on it, Iqbal, you know, we talk about savings, but people are still not doing it. It's a habit thing, and it's also around the conversation of well-being. And how do you think we can get more people talking about money or make it more normalized? Because right now, all of you are talking about the different things that you're doing, but unless you're in this room, no one on the outside, the everyday person, wouldn't know. So how do we get that conversation going so it becomes more global, more national, more local, and not just in a room?
I think the so I think the problem with talking about money is, one, we're all embarrassed about it, but if we remove that for the time being, everything that we're investing in, believe it or not, is really boring, right? And that's fundamentally the problem. If I'd invested in Fever Tree, when I go out and have a gin and tonic on a Saturday night, and the tonic is Fever Tree, I guarantee I will tell the person standing next to me that I own shares in Fever Tree. I guarantee it. But we don't do that, right? So we need to make investing slightly more transparent again. So here's a question for everyone in the audience. I'm going to do the question, I'm going to ask the question. Hands up in this audience who think that the price of electricity and gas or 5G is going to be a success. Hands up. Price of electricity, will it go up in the next 10 years?
I think it's going to go
Your
up.
electricity bill.
Yeah.
Gas bill, will it go up? Keep your hands up. Gas bill, right? Will 5G be a success? No, keep your hands up. I know you're tired, keep your hands up, right? So how many people here actually own shares in an electricity company or gas company? Look around.
Yeah,
Very few people. It's a question you've got to ask yourself tomorrow morning, just to say, if I know the price is going to go up and I know profits are going to go up, why am I not owning shares in an electricity company? The moment you own shares in an electricity company, or Vodafone or whatever, you will start having the conversation with your neighbour, with your friends over a barbecue. That's the conversation we have to start. It's not just, if we keep just talking about money and ISAs and pensions and this and that and becoming millionaires, it's a really boring conversation. We need to start talking about the companies.
But the access to investing is not always available for everybody. I mean, this is why I like blockchain and fractional investing.
Yep.
But, you know, you talked about Apple, but does everybody in the room, would they be able to purchase one stock? Or
Yeah, you can buy fractional shares on Apple on eToro tomorrow morning. So yes,
Right.
but not just on our platform. There's other platforms which also do fractional ownership. So you can go and buy fractional shares of any stock that you want tomorrow morning.
I guess the question is, though, that how do we get, I mean, everybody I think in this room is incredibly financially literate and would get that, but how do you put it out there, you know, for the man on the street, you know?
Again, we have to make it very, very simple. And we've overcomplicated investing because it is for the 1%. We talk about percentage returns, we talk about yield curves, we talk about all of this. It doesn't matter, just go out there, buy one stock, one share in a company you like. You wear Nike trainers, go and buy Nike shares. You have an iPhone, go and buy Apple, one share. I guarantee you will tell your friends that you own a share in Apple. The moment you start that conversation, it'll spread.
Iqbal, is this financial advice yet?
No, the caveat still applies. Just to let you know, I don't own Apple products. I do not like Apple products. If you want to go and buy the shares, feel
Isn't
free.
this kind of going back to that Warren Buffett style of, you know, I like Coke, so I'm going to invest in Coke? I mean, he
100%.
has a very sort of down-to-earth, you know,
Are
investment
you
strategy.
comparing me to Warren Buffett? No, yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
And I think, you know, people people found that easy to understand, but I don't know why that's not kind of translated more widely. And people think about investment as being something that's really hard and only comes.
So I've got an idea. Everybody go home tonight, tweet and saying you can buy fractional shares for free on eToro. Let's start the conversation.
Okay, we'll do your advertising.
You can do it.
That's good. Okay. Should we move on to? There's another question that was right behind the. Maybe we got a. Oh, okay. Well, let's go there, and then we're
democratising the questions.
That is good. To be honest, I can't see that well, so you might have to guide me a little. Okay.
Hello, Maija. Thank you very much for hosting a very interesting discussion tonight. Gents, I'm in a Fintech. At an early stage, I'm chief of Finexus. And the question I have for you is, you're all three of you are amassing huge amounts of data on your consumers right now. I've got two questions for you. First thing, are your organizations willing to share data in response to the lady's question at the front there about educating people if there are companies that are willing to help consumers learn more about the process of financial management? And second of all, what are your feelings on data sovereignty?
Great question. I'm glad someone brought the data question up.
Yeah,
Ali, you go.
Yeah, of course. So you're right, we do have a lot of data on our members, the way they sort of interact, their spending habits. These are small businesses, they're very important to the economy. We try, actually sort of pairs to the question you're asking there. We're trying to sort of take part in a national debate about productivity and how businesses, frankly the welfare of businesses as well. So we did a piece of research recently which suggested that about 60% of business owners work over the weekends. And actually, we're trying to sort of feed, I suppose, the spending patterns of people and the data in aggregate to be part of that sort of discussion. We don't try and monetize that data or sales or do anything like that. Can I ask, actually, were you suggesting that this sort of aggregate data, we publicize trends that can kind of foster this discussion?
Well, it's more about affiliation with other fintechs. I think a lot of collaboration work would be a lot better than people just acting individually, because they may have different product offerings. I'm asking if your institution is willing to share that data with the idea of bettering the understanding for consumers and educating them so that they can buy shares, they can have a business, and they can transfer money and do whatever, but holistically is the question. That's why I'm asking, can the data be used in a community as opposed to people siloing it and leaving it for themselves?
I think that's what some aggregators are doing. I have in mind the money dashboard. So where actually they are compiling all the data and selling that or having in mind to sell that as a potential alternative source of data, such as I have that pool of clients spending that amount of money at Tesco. Well, I know compared to last quarter, if they are having better or worse, and you can then, without sharing like private data, but to aggregate everything, I think that at one bank level, it's not really possible, but gathering everything together. So I think that should answer to your question. And then from there, you can say, okay, look, I know that I have all of this money parked on current accounts everywhere. What about, I go to Tide, I'm asking Tide, can you open, with potentially those business, or what can you do if I come with that amount of money? What can you do for me? So, and that's where it comes to serving your customer, everyone better. If you say, they don't need to know it's Tide, they just don't need to, you just tell them, look, your money is on a current account, I just move it on a saving account and you have access to it, and I give you 1 or 2% or out compared to 0. Or minus if you are in Europe.
And there is an interesting theory that there's going to be this big sort of gathering together again on a customer level. So having fragmented and you do your business banking here and your personal banking here, and you do your savings account here and your remittances here, the people will not want to have 15 money management apps and there'll be a coming together. But I'm guessing you don't really mean that on an individual level. It's more like the industry should be doing.
I'm interested in the commercialization of it.
I'm interested in the commercialization of data. I'm interested in who owns that data and how we use it. Because some of the responses to me would indicate that if you're sharing data, you're making money from sharing data. I'm not saying that's the case. Because we know that happens quite a lot in the market as it is today. In order to give the consumer the best value for money, I would expect that data is then used for best purpose with a view to helping the consumer educate themselves as to how to best use their money. And when you say who owns that data, I mean, what are we going to do with that data to help people? That's really what I was asking the three institutions.
Okay, as far as I know. I mean,
Short answer, yes. If we can share the data, we can do something about this. So yes, but don't fully understand the question. But ultimately, who owns the data? Customer owns the data. If people want to understand trading patterns, and people want to understand, for instance, what was the most traded stock yesterday, just go onto our social feed and you can have a look. The data is all open. So in terms of customer information, GDPR and everything will prevent us from doing that. But if it's holistic, anonymized data, then I don't see.
Yeah, you're looking at transactional data as opposed to personal data, just so I can differentiate that for you.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's not anonymized, I think we do share a lot of that with a lot of journalists, etc., who want to know what's traded, men trading more, what times of day people are trading the most. That type of information we can share. We don't have an issue with that.
My question around the education is knowing that the tried and tested route is you find out what your income is, you find out what your expenses are, you try and make a gap between them. Hopefully the gap is in a positive than a negative. If it's in a negative, you need to do something, which is either cut down your expenses or increase your income. Then set up your emergency fund, because the boiler's always going to break, always going to break. And then when you've got your emergency fund, do things like investment clubs or credit unions that will teach you. So how do you think that you as challenger banks can actually reach back to some of those old style things that exist that do a lot of that education for you? Because ultimately, that is your talent pipeline that will come in, that won't do too many crazy things, that will not increase the consumer debt. So I'm asking around education, how can you link with old style, like the credit unions, like investment clubs, who will do a lot of that education for you?
So I'm going to plug eToro right now. If you get investment clubs, great, there's somebody doing the investment for you, right? You pool in £5 or £10 a month and they'll take the investments for you. If you go onto eToro tomorrow morning, you will find on our platform what we call popular investors. Right? These people have been trading on our platform 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. You can see their entire trading history. You can simply go and copy that popular investor. So there might be somebody who's really good in banking stocks, or somebody who's really good in stocks in China or in the US, etc. We don't charge you anything for it. You just simply press copy. When he goes and buys, you will buy. When he sells, you will sell at exactly the same price. That's your investment club built there, right there for you, in whichever vertical you want, whichever country you want to invest in, whichever stock market you want to invest in, and whichever asset class you want to invest in, whether it's FX, commodities, crypto. So you don't understand crypto, you want to learn how to invest? Go and copy Jay Nemesis. He's probably one of the best crypto investors on our platform. Just click copy. Or if you want to ask him a question, you can just go and chat to him and say, I have a question about Bitcoin. So I would say old school investment club, credit unions, new school, popular investors on eToro. That's at least what we're doing.
Can I ask you, what percentage of people on the platform use that copy function? Is it?
Great question. Haven't got a clue. Guys at the back, no. Be great. Off the top of my head, I actually don't know.
I just wondered
so
whether
as I can tell you, new customers. So 20 to 25% of our customers come on to copy somebody else new.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that total, I
Yeah.
don't know off the top of my head, but 20%.
Because I guess what I'm trying to get at is it a kind of specialist place where people fancy themselves to be a bit of a financial whiz and mostly playing on eToro, or are you genuinely getting these kind of people in who are then doing the copy function, they want to do the simpler stuff?
Genuinely getting people who don't either have the time to invest and trade and learn themselves, don't have the knowledge, and they will just, it's effectively having your money managed by somebody else. It's really what we're doing.
I think that in terms of education, one of the things that the three of our fintechs are sharing is trying to explain that there is a rip-off going on for every single transaction that you do, for investing, for dealing with your business, for transferring money. And that's part of, I think, the natural education, because we have to come with a simple message saying we're going to do it better and cheaper for you. And cheaper, you need to show that when you transfer money from here to Ethiopia, that's going to cost you less than if you do it with Western Union. When you have a business tied with Tide, that's going to cost you, If you go to the high street bank, that's going to cost you. You don't even know how much it's going to cost you. Here, because you are entering a market, you have to tell people that's going to cost you this, and that. And guess what? I'm comparing all of that, or even transaction by transaction, how much it's going to cost you there. And that's, I think, a real part of education. Same thing for eToro, I think, with the fact that you can buy a portion of share, and that's going to cost you way much less than if you invest with another.
It's free.
Yeah, so it's less.
A lot less.
It's less.
Okay, we have some questions at the back. So there's the gentleman there, and then we've got the gentleman in the red shirt. So.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for putting this evening on. I've heard a lot about, what's happening tonight, and fintechs and whatnot. My question is, it might sound like a silly one, but blockchain as a technology, what would be the future for it in terms of fintechs and just in the future? Because we hear a lot about cryptocurrencies, for example, having smart contracts. What does the panel think that is the future of blockchain? I know something about it.
Iqbal's got your name on there.
Well, Iqbal's going to say it's all great.
No. So again, without going into too much detail, what blockchain does, it allows you to establish trust between two entities who've never met before, right? That, if you really understand what that means, that's triple entry accounting. Imagine what that's going to do for business. So without going into accounting too much detail, 100 years ago, we did business with people who we knew. So I'd meet you on the street, you'd sell me something, I'd give you some money, I'll make a record in my ledger. Then we entered double entry accounting, whereas we could do business farther afield. I'll do business with somebody in China, they make a record in their ledger, I'd make a record here. Blockchain is triple entry accounting, right? You don't need to ever meet that individual. Imagine how that's going to expand business. So for me, blockchain is the internet of value. So the internet was about communication, blockchain is about value. Just quickly answering your question what Bitcoin is. This gentleman over here makes money when you buy the pound and you convert it to the dollar. Now, if everybody in America had Bitcoin and everybody in the UK had Bitcoin, he would be out of business. Right?
You can buy Bitcoins.
And that's the power of Bitcoin, right? Just to answer that. So hopefully that answered your question. For me, it's going to be bigger than the internet. My wife asked me the same question. She said, "What's this blockchain thing?" I said, "It smells like the internet, just a whole lot bigger."
Oh, not blockchain, but I just thought in terms of like the future, because I've seen a lot of the. Sorry, but no, in terms of blockchains, I've seen a lot of projects relating to blockchain. Some of them are answering questions that nobody's asked. What about phase? I mean, forget ICOs, that's a completely different tangent. But you know, in terms of, because obviously one use could be like cryptocurrencies to varying degrees of success. But in terms of like usage for other applications and other things, it's something that just interests me. That's all. So I know obviously in terms of reputation, so like that, it's all there. So it's triple accounting. That's why in other ways it could be potentially deployed. Other than say.
There are ideas, for instance, social networks, and so you get paid for the content you post. So imagine every time you post a picture on Instagram, you got paid for it because there's no entity like Instagram in the middle. So they've got ideas like that. They've got decentralized casinos. So if you own a decentralized casino on the blockchain, it doesn't belong in any country, so you don't pay tax anywhere, which again is really powerful if you're a casino owner. So there's lots of these applications which are coming out. I mean, I don't know which one's going to win. In terms of applications being built which actually have no use, let's think about Facebook and Twitter. Who really needed to send 140 characters out into the ether? We survived without it, but it's doing really well. So I don't know what's going to win.
What's the blockchain plan for Tide?
Before I answer that, I'll give you my favourite obscure blockchain usage, which is, maybe you'll know more than me about, but the land registry in Guyana uses blockchain. So here you go, you have a secure mechanism for having a proper ledger of all the land owned in the country, and they've already in that country moved over to a purely blockchain-based ledger. So
where's that?
It's I think it's Guyana, so like in it's a small South American country.
Oh, okay.
For Tide, we we'll wait and see. There are of course lots of blockchain invoicing applications and so on, but we haven't yet kind of explored them too deeply.
Okay. And what about Eastern? I mean, is blockchain a threat for world women?
Not necessarily. I mean, we mentioned. I mean, World Remit is at the moment, as far as I know, not involved in blockchain, but I'm thinking about risk and the money laundering things. I mean, that's one of the things that could be tackled with blockchain. because you kind of are securing the whole chain of transaction. So yeah, that's basically where. But at World Remit level, for now, there's no particular investigation there. That's going to come, but I'm seeing that personally more kind of a part of the value chain that's going to be then done better by a risk monitoring perspective. I mean, so that's, I mean, in the remittance in that list.
Okay.
So yeah.
So it'd help you on the money laundering side. Okay, shall we move on to the question that we had at the back here, gentleman with glasses?
Hi, thank you very much for organizing this talk. It's very interesting. I'm a small business owner. We actually use Tide as our main bank.
Hey.
And we've used World Remit, but transfer-wise, they do slightly better deals for us. So, and we're going to move on. I'm going to try and buy some shares in Apple tomorrow, so you've got one extra customer here. My question really is like, I mean, I would consider myself to be fairly financially literate, but in the words of Drake, the popular artist, you live long enough to be, for your idols to be a rival. And by that I mean, you as businesses, fairly startup in the world of finance, surely you're going to be turning into, one of these guys who we were being overshadowed by, and is culture going to be enough to sort of carry you on to the point where you'll have to make very dark decisions, which are very, very opaque, which is how most financial industry works in the layman's view. Thank you.
Yeah, what a great question. I actually, Iqbal and I were talking about this before. Tide has always been a startup that is a bank in inverted commas. So you have a very regulated, severe, serious entity, and the sort of move fast and break things mentality. And there's constantly been this tension between the two. In March, we will move into an office in the city away from our sort of exposed brick walled office in Farringdon, and what that will do to that sort of culture is a bit of a question. But going back to what you were saying, will we ever turn into these big behemoths and frankly lose that customer centricity or lose that obsession about what makes the user important? I'm not sure. I think that comes from complacency. It comes from a position of an oligopoly, and I don't think that the future of our companies is for these 5 tower blocks to be replaced with the new 5 tower blocks. I think it's a much more sort of complex and finely grounded sector. So I don't think we will see that. I think there's much more healthy competitive dynamics introduced by tech. I don't see it going in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, what we are maybe forgetting is that in fintech there's tech as well. Are we saying that about Google? Is Google, dodgy? I don't know. So I think there's another element around that. It's pretty interesting. When I had a question when I arrived here, are you still a startup with 800 employees?
We couldn't figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the cutoff point for a startup? Well, you're definitely a scale up, but at what point do you just become a business?
Well, you become a business from the beginning, right?
Well, no, but just like one that doesn't have this special title, but means that we expect kind of great and different behaviour from you.
I think, average age is still, so something like 32 years old. So it's not that old. I feel old.
What do you wear to work? That's the big question.
Oh, the same thing without that. But I'm one of the exception. I can't play ping pong with it, so it's embarrassing. So I need to put my sneakers on. But no, I of course there is at some point an element, and bureaucracy is coming at some point. When you are growing, it's pretty hard to carry on growing, and at a certain stage, I don't know where is the limit. If we can say that there is a limit, but at some point you need processes. It's not anymore the person that comes with his toolkit and can grow from 5 employees to 20 employees. It's totally a different story, from 500 to 800 and from 800 to 2,000. But it's still not, I think we're comparing something that is, 100,000 employees. It's still some long way to go.
Yeah, what do you do, Iqbal, to kind of stop eToro from becoming, more opaque, or more like just a normal stock trading
Trying my
organisation?
best to make them a normal stock trading business. I think it's the people. It comes down to people. I think we'll stop calling ourselves a startup when the people change, and the way they think change, the way they behave changes. So it's not for me, it's not about size. We operate in 140 countries. We have 801 employees. Are we still a startup? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, you still feel like a startup?
Definitely feel like a startup. It's 8 o'clock in the evening. If I was working there, I would be home by now. So,
Yeah. Well, we do, let's see if we've got final questions. We have, oh yes, I have been ignoring you for a long time, so I think we need to get your question in, and then the lady in the blue jacket.
And then pizza.
And then pizza. So let's do final 2 questions, if that's all right, and then you can ask the rest of us over some food.
So yeah, thank you for your talks and contributions. One of you mentioned pensions, I think, and about people not really putting investments to pensions. So I recently opened my Starling app, and there's some integrations in there. Love Starling, sounds great. Seems to have a very good reputation among small business owners. And there was an integration in there for Pension Bee, which is a new challenger pension company. Not really, I didn't know much about these new pension startups, so I sort of tapped some buttons and they pulled any pension money from my previous pension, which my employer was paying into. And I think, like, Revolut, you can buy stocks and shares on now as well. And I think, in answer to your question, I think when apps have, this is just my perspective, when apps have these integrations, apps that everyone uses day to day, like Barclays app or Revolut's app or Starling app, when they have these ease of access integrations in them, that can potentially help towards getting these things off the ground, right? And bringing awareness of what is out there. And I'm gonna, well, first of all, like you said about having shares in companies, I have shares in one of those companies. I'm not going to say which one. I mentioned 3 just then, but they're all great companies. But I'm going to give Lavinia a bit of a plug here because she's doing a financial wellbeing day soon. So if anyone is interested in learning more about financial well-being, then go to Lavinia's day. But my question for you now is, I've been working with a blockchain startup, DLT startup, for the past, well, they're a client because I'm a contractor, but they sort of were in the supply chain space, and one of the things that they were saying is a possibility for crypto, for blockchain projects, is separating out some of the core functions of money. Like you said earlier on, you said we need to talk about money, but like economists ask what is money, and some will say it's a unit of account, a medium of exchange and stored value. So that's one of the perspectives on that. But this is to all of you, do you think that, and this is the perspective of the CEO of the company I was working for, not mine, because I'm an economist background, so you guys decide to be interested to listen to this, but do you think that separating the store of value and the medium of exchange functions of money, because you could do that theoretically with digital money, do you think that would help the economy and stop like hoarding? Because like the CEO's perspective is that economies grow based on the velocity of money moving around, the speed at which it moves around the economy, and that helps the economies grow. Do you think that separating out store of value from a medium of exchange would be overall helpful to the global economy?
No. I think it'll make money more complicated. We're used to having all of those 3 medium exchange store of value combined. For me, that's what Bitcoin is doing, and stick with it. It works. Sorry.
So I'm asking this last question during this session because of my curiosity. First of all, thanks a lot. It was just great 3 sessions. I remember it is about definition. I remember it was 2013, and I was responsible enterprise architecture for architecture in Africa for a new bank for unbanked and underbanked. We did this together with MTN and eToro. And I'm not going to describe this architecture, just definition of unbanked and underbanked. For me, it was a huge surprise, and maybe this is why I remember this, probably I will forever. They told me, Joanna, they are not people without the bank account. They cannot read, they cannot write, they have a phone. That's all. And this is all this design was about this. What is your definition of unbanked and underbanked people?
Let the banking guys out.
I'll start. Look, I'm going to keep giving you answers from the business perspective, but we look internationally, and there's a very interesting trend we've seen in India, right? Where you have the India population of 1.2, 1.3 billion people. There's people estimate around about 400,000 micro businesses or traders of some sort. The number of that are sort of registered with the equivalent of Companies House is around about 10 million. Right? So you have this sort of great swathes of people that are traders, that are businesses, that are unbanked. They operate as people effectively. There's a very interesting company called OK Credit that launched about, I think they sort of really launched at the end of 2017. So they've been going for just a little over 2 years. And in that time, they've grown from 0 to 10 million active users by giving, we're talking about India, by the way, only recently, in the last 5-10 years, people do have smartphones, they do have WhatsApp. By giving people access not just to banks, but just a very, very sort of simple way of, if you owe me money, I just keep a little record of it, and I can sort of send you little reminders on WhatsApp. Just that incredibly simple product, linked through WhatsApp, no banks involved at all, just that kind of payments network has just taken off like absolute, taken off like a wildfire. So, look, it's a strange answer to your question about unbanked, because that technically isn't unbanked, but it's sort of untouched by fintech, untouched by software. For these 10 million people, overwhelmingly it was their very first B2B, the very first SaaS product they had on their phone. They had WhatsApp, they had Facebook, and this was the third thing they had. So I think when you talk about unbanked, that's the sort of thing I think about from the perspective of businesses.
Stan, you must have a few final thoughts on unbanked.
Well, I guess it's the way to answer to unbanked or underbanked would be either to allow the customer to send or receive money either in their bank account or on their mobile phone. So you just explore both. And yeah, to your point, you don't force people, you don't try to force people to go to the bank. That's not what we can do, what we want. But okay, you don't have a bank account, let's find another solution via technology, via architecture, via something simple for them and simple to understand. So I guess that would be my answer to that.
Still the same definition,
Right.
similar.
Okay, well, I think we are now out of time, sadly, and the pizzas have arrived. So I think it's time to maybe call this to a close. Thank you very much to the panelists.